to me, inclusivity is about how people feel. So yes, you can write a report that says we have increased our BAME representation, for instance, across the fundraising sector from 9% BAME to 15% BAME. And that's an achievement. Like, if they're the right people for the job, that's an achievement, right? However, what I'd love to hear about is like the people survey that you did. Like, how do they feel? Are they here, but yet don't feel comfortable to be themselves at work? Then to me, that's a bigger issue. There's no point getting the numbers if you haven't got the inclusivity behind it.
You're listening to Simon Scriver's amazingly ultimate fundraising superstar podcast, talking all things fundraising, charities, nonprofits, and more. Here's your host, as always, Simon Scriver.
Every year, one of the big things that I look forward to watching is I Wish I Thought of That. It's a kind of a competition that goes on every year, but it's really a group of fundraisers and people in the sector who come in to talk about a particular campaign that they wish they thought of, that they're really interested in. And this year, they picked a winner of sorts, or one of the best people to who spoke at the time, and certainly one of the ones, if not the one that struck me the most. And so I reached out and I invited her to come onto my podcast. And so today with me, I have Camille St-Omer Donaldson.
That's me. How's
that pronunciation of your name?
Nice. It was much more like actually in the proper and traditional sense of the pronunciation than even really? I do. Yeah, there was the French accent there. I don't even bother with that.
Yeah, what's the London version? How do you
Camille St-Omer Donaldson.
St-Omer Donaldson. Okay. That's what I need to be saying going forward. I thought I'd add a bit of spice to it.
I liked it.
Good. How are you today, Camille?
Good. I'm feeling really good. It's Friday and it's the bank holiday. So yeah, no, really good.
Good.
And excited to be on the podcast.
Yeah, well, I'm really excited you have me. I assumed you'd be in hot demand and hard to pin down, because I suppose you came to a lot of people's attention off the back of this. I Wish I Thought of That. You're a bit of a celebrity in the sector now. Is that fair to say?
I mean, I'd like to think that. Certainly amongst me and my friends, I'd definitely say that story. Really. Yeah. But yeah, no, after I Wish I Thought of That, there was this whole big thing. Like, I realized just how important Twitter is, I think. And suddenly I was like, I better update my bio and I better put a new profile photo. I had like loads and loads of followers straight after. I say loads in the grand scheme of things. It went from like 90 to about like 300 or so.
Suddenly there's like a lot more consequence to what you rant about on
Twitter.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Oh, yeah.
So tell me, how did you get involved with the I Wish I Thought of That? Is that something you applied for, or did they approach you? Or?
Yeah, it was really interesting actually. So Leslie Pinder, who works at the Red Cross, who I know fairly well, I didn't actually know about I Wish I Thought of That before she mentioned it to me. But she kind of said that there's this really cool event that happens, and I think you'd be a really, really great speaker at it. And I kind of, didn't think about it for a while. And then I got this email from her going, signed you up. All happening. Like, I hope you're ready. And I was like, oh, okay. And there was like, this introduction, and I met Sue, who is Sue Kershaw, who puts on the event together with Open. And she was like, we're really stoked to have you, and let me know, your thoughts on what you'd like to talk about.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much kind of how I heard about it and how it kind of all started up. And then I sat on YouTube for a few hours watching other people's.
Watching the old ones. And,
yeah.
And did you feel confident going into it? Because you kind of oozed confidence in it. You come across as a very strong speaker. Is it something that you just kind of took in your stride, or was it scary?
Well, I guess two parts. So they pair you up, or some people up, with a mentor. So my mentor was a lady called Louise Lai from Open.
Okay.
And she is awesome. And she'd actually done the I Wish I Thought of That already, I think a couple of years back. So I was paired up with her, and I was super, super nervous. And I came to her, and she was like, so just come to me with the idea, and we'll have a quick coffee and have a bit of a discussion and a chat about what it's like and how I can support you kind of going forward. And I came to her in my typical Camille fashion with like a list of 10 different like charities with like 5,000 different campaigns that I'd love to talk about. And she was like, right, go away and have a think and come back in a second. So it was really kind of working through the process, I think, with Louise that really helped me to feel confident in it. She helped me put in place some really kind of like good tips and tools for like structuring and memorizing things like speeches and getting to grips with it. And if I think back to like our first or second coffee meeting, I had like 5 pages of stuff that I wanted to say. And actually that was whittled down to 2.
Because it's not a long time. I mean, you only have like 7 minutes to present it, and it flies by.
Yeah. And the other, I guess, bit of it where some people are like, oh, you do this all the time. So currently my day job is a training and quality control manager at the Red Cross, assistant manager at the Red Cross. So I pretty much for the last 6 years of my fundraising career have trained people and run training sessions and stood up obviously in front of large groups of people. But it's nothing like standing up in front of people at I wish I thought of that. That was totally different.
What's the difference? Is it because they're like peers, or is it just the nature of what you talk about is out of your comfort zone? Or?
Yeah. Like if like I spent a lot of my training career like teaching fundraisers how to fundraise. So like face-to-face dialogue fundraisers, training them on how to fundraise, the skills that it needed. Like that's like I know that's my bread and butter. That's really easy to, well, for me, I feel it's really easy for me to deliver. But kind of talking about something that was a little bit, like you said, without outside my comfort zone, not a charity that I'm kind of I'm working for kind of every single day was really different. But I think it's also, people often assume that training means presenting and speaking in front of people. And it's very different. It's actually having a conversation. I know you said you do a bit of training and stuff and coaching. So you'll know that. So it's that also that lack of interaction that you don't get when you're standing up for 7 minutes talking about periods. And I would have loved to just had a chat actually. It's a bit more one way, and you kind of almost don't know how it's going until the end or until you get a bit of feedback. Exactly. I had a few laughs.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, the audience seemed pretty engaged. So what was the campaign? It was the Bloody Good campaign.
Yes, it was indeed. It was the Bloody Good festive period. So after Louise kind of sent me away after our first meeting to kind of whittle it down to just a couple of charities, I went over on my Instagram because I was thinking when I was asked to speak, it was charities, and I started thinking of, kind of the big ones that everyone knows, the big names. So I started then scrolling through my Instagram, and I was like, oh, I follow like this really cool group of women who are doing something pretty awesome. Oh yeah, they're a charity as well. So that was really like a no-brainer for me, and it was really, really great to be able to kind of give them a platform, I think, as well. But yeah, so it was the festive period campaign, and it ran throughout the Christmas period. I want to say year before last now, actually. Last year, November it started, where instead of buying kind of traditional, Christmas presents, what you could do instead was actually to fill a stocking with a sum of money, which would mean that sum of money would then be turned into period packs. It was pretty genius, I think. And I think for such a small organization, it was, what really grabbed me was really their way of communicating. It was like, for me anyway, it was unheard of, certainly unseen, to be so explicit and to be so bold and
honest, I suppose. A bit rude is always good, and a bit straightforward and honest, because we can get I mean, you've probably found this working in a large charity, you can get bogged down with the restrictions and the regulations. The committee has to decide what's right and wrong. And so sometimes it's really nice to see an organization just going out and saying it like it is a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And for someone like me, I mean, my whole world is compliance. I work in quality control. My whole world is compliance. So like actually talking about Bloody Good period was very different for me outside of those comfort zones. But it was awesome. And I work with Ruby, who I know you've had on your podcast before, but I work with Ruby, and it was just so special to be able to kind of catch up with her and get some real insights into the campaign, because she is Bloody Good Periods, one of the trustees.
Oh, is she? Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, did you not know?
No, okay.
So she was super. I kind of went over to her and I was like, you are the trustee of like a really awesome charity. Can I have a chat with you?
Oh, that's nice.
So it was great to get that kind of support as well. And then, yeah, then the bloody founder of Bloody Good tweeted about me and sent me really nice stickers and a bag and a lovely card to say thank you.
Ah, lovely.
Which was really awesome.
That's good. That's good support, Kat.
Yes, exactly. I also signed up then, so they kind of weaved in a regular giving us. Signed up for that, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's nice. Good on you. And you must have been chuffed when you, you were picked as kind of the #1 speech and that.
Yeah. Super. Yeah, beyond belief. I have some videos around somewhere. They're probably in the depths of my Instagram kind of stories. But some videos looming around somewhere of me doing a thank you acceptance speech after many classes.
Wow. Accepting your Oscar.
Yeah. But I think I was talking about this the other day actually with my manager, that sometimes I think people just, like, even when you kind of said, oh, you really came across confident. And I think so often people only see the end result. And like, so me winning IWITOT, for instance, but like actually it's so hard to get people to kind of understand or see all the hard work that goes in before that. Like me the night before, who couldn't sleep because I was panicking about what I was going to say and what I was going to wear, funnily enough. But like it's just, I wish like when someone has a big achievement or something happens in someone's kind of career or whatever it might be, that you could also have like a little mini 1 minute, almost like a boomerang video, whatever you've got on like Instagram, like a short story of like, but this was my process.
Yeah, the montage.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's funny because I mean, someone put it really well at a conference I was at a while ago, and they said you need to stop comparing your inside to someone else's outside. Like what we see when we look at I Wish I Thought of That is like a bunch of really polished speakers who've put in so much time to that. But I know, I mean, you're saying you were nervous and losing sleep over it. I know people like Nikki Bell, who's a flawless speaker. She was nervous going into it. Even people like Bernard Ross,
I know,
as smug and great as he is, you got to know that he's a little bit nervous going up there. And
totally. And Paul, I think I wrote a little bit of a blog. It's on Open's website, and so in the blog I was saying that Paul Amadi, so the CSO of Red Cross, he said to me, so he's also spoken at IWITOT, and when he found out I was speaking, he said to me that actually the biggest thing that really helped him was just to remember that the audience is actually rooting for you.
Yeah.
And I was like, good point. Like, they don't want to see me fail.
Yeah.
They want to see me do a good job, so they're probably going to help me and encourage me to do that.
Yeah, no one wants to waste a couple of hours watching like 10 shit speeches. They want to.
Very true. And actually, I was really lucky because both Nikki Bell and Bernard Ross were the ones. They were first and second just before I went up. So it was really good actually to see them. I was like, okay, I can see that. Like before, when we were sat together, I was like, I can see that they're nervous, but they got up there and they had their 7 minutes and they sounded confident and they spoke about some really cool stuff. So I was like, yeah, I can do this. Well, poor Nikki had to go first.
Yeah, that's a tough one to do. And I mean, some people might have been intimidated by seeing good speakers go before them. And I think, is there a risk that it intimidates anyone who'd like to do I Wish I Thought of That? I mean, people must look at you and think, you got it down, you got it polished. I can never be that good.
Oh, I really hope people don't. No way.
Yeah. Basically, you've just crushed a load of girls' dreams.
Oh, no. I want to be the Beyonce in this. I don't want to crush your dreams. I want to inspire them.
Nice.
But no, and that's, again, sorry to kind of be repetitive, but that's, again, why I think it's so important that people get to see the process. Because, yes, the outcome is that, but it does show that, like, I don't think my outcome was, even if I didn't win, I would have been still super, super proud, because actually, I think it was a result of hard work. I worked hard, and that's what happened as a result. Like, I delivered a really confident and hopefully inspirational and motivational kind of speech about Bloody Good within 7 minutes. Like, but that didn't come out of nowhere. That came out of 2 to 3 months of meeting up with my mentor weekly, working on it after work, working on it on the weekends. And my boyfriend at the time, my parents at the time, my friends at the time, like, would hear this speech 24/7. Like, it comes from that. So, like, I felt it was it was and it's not, I don't know how to say this without like being humble.
Yeah.
I really don't. But I hope it comes across in the sense that like it's not that I'm not humble. It's just that I think that I put in really hard work and saw the result of that.
Well, I think, yeah, I mean, people undermine their own hard work sometimes, and you know, I've had that with a lot of my clients when they have successes. And fundraising, we see it a lot where it's like, oh, we got really lucky, you know, and you know, it's lucky when people donate to us, and it's lucky when this happens. And it's like, no, you busted your ass to do this,
Absolutely.
and so we should take a bit of credit for that.
People need to start owning that a little bit more. I again, back to Ruby, she's done some inspirational things for me. But Ruby is also one of the co-chairs of the Gender Equality Network at the Red Cross. So they put on during International Women's Week a kind of series of events and workshops and really cool stuff. I chaired a panel for them with a couple of guest speakers, and one of the events was actually a workshop called "Fuck Being Humble," and it was just this woman who was talking about just how, I mean, it was aimed obviously at women in this scenario, but she says she's done similar workshops for men also. But it's just how much we forget to say, like, or we don't mention the fact that, no, like I worked pretty damn hard. And actually then what you see on the outside or what you see as an outcome is a result of that. And I feel like I'm really starting to own that this year, and maybe, I'm sure she'd love me to say it's as a result of her workshop.
Yeah.
And maybe it is. But I think, like you said, in fundraising, you just see, like you said, you hear get lucky. I started off as a telephone fundraiser, right?
Yeah, Pell and Bales.
Pell and Bales.
Yeah, which so many people got their start in, and it's amazing.
Exactly. And you get, like, I remember me getting, like, as we call it, our first gift or our first sign up, right?
Yeah.
And you do, and you sit there and you go, oh yeah, I've got this because I was just lucky. I've called 10 people, so the 11th must say yes.
Yeah.
But no, it was actually because I'd learned a skill and learned a script or whatever, and I was repeating and doing the same thing over and over and gained experience in that, so that I was able to inspire somebody to say yes. So,
yeah, you mentioned that the kind of that session being run for a women's network, and I read in the past that women are worse at that than men. That men are, you know, we have a kind of, you know, we're obviously living in a patriarchy. We have that level of privilege where it's much easier for us to assume we're skilled and that we, you know, it's because of us. Whereas women very often downplay that. And I've read about, you know, in terms of applying for jobs, men always kind of read in job descriptions all the things they can do, whereas women read the things that they can't do. Do you think that's changing? I mean, you know, you're seeing kind of networks like this talking about it. You're seeing people like you who are happy to step up and own it. Are we making any progress on that?
I'd like to think so. I hope so. I can only talk about me personally, and I feel like I'm making progress in that. And in doing that, I think it's also good to recognize that, like, even just being able to say that to you, like, and say to you that, like, I really want to own my successes. It isn't easy, and it doesn't come without, like, me now, I'm going to come off this podcast and overthink everything I've said. Like, it doesn't come without that. Do you know what I mean? So, I think, more and more people are owning it on the surface. I hope, I think, I feel. But I think the real work is actually getting people to own it inside. Because it's easy to say, like, oh, I own this, I own my success, and I'm going to feel more confident for going for jobs where typically I would have felt as a woman, certainly as a Black woman, that you know, I might have stand less of a chance. But it doesn't mean that I've managed to beat that battle on the inside. And actually, whether or not I believe that on the inside is the bigger deal, I think, and I don't think we're there yet. I think a lot of people are able to put it on the surface, but not necessarily believing it on the inside.
Well,
sorry to get so deep.
No, I mean, we try and get a little bit deep on this podcast. Well, you know, usually the guests get deep, and then I kind of ruin it by making some shitty joke. But in terms
feel free.
Yeah, you've mentioned there, you know, about being a Black woman, and you kind of reminded me. I don't know if you've seen the series on Netflix, Trigger Warning. Which is really good. And there was a quote in that struck me when I was watching it. A woman who was saying that, you know, there's all this kind of pressure to be a strong Black woman now, and that actually she's still trying to grasp living as a Black woman, you know, let alone being strong. Because obviously you're facing so many challenges that someone like me could never, you know, I like to think I can imagine it, but obviously I can't. This is something you're really passionate about. You're quite vocal about this, I've noticed.
I'm if you've noticed a little, super passionate about it. And I think that's absolutely right, that there is this, and it's not a, sometimes when I talk about diversity, there is an element of me that's like, you have to caveat it with like, there's no top trumps. There's no like, my diversity issues are worse than your diversity issues. It's like, there's definitely no top trumps. And I think that's something that's worked really well actually with the diversity networks here at the Red Cross. We really work collaboratively. But I do think absolutely, as a Black woman, that there is, I know as being a Black woman myself, that there is absolutely this expectation that I am able to carry so many different things on my shoulders. And again, we keep going back around in circles, but that's why I think seeing the process and understanding the process of someone's success is so important, because you just see this smiling face, for instance, every day or whatever it might be. And actually there's so much going on behind that. And it's not only with outside of my community, but within my community, I'm expected to be that. So lots of those things have kind of been coming to the forefront for me, I think, this year. And I think lots more people are talking about it openly. I've got, like you said, we've got programs like series like Trigger Warnings, but, also really amazing books. One of the books I read recently was one called Slay in Your Lane, which is apparently the Black Girl Bible, written by these two young Black women. And it's all these things that I wish when I was a kid, like I had to inspire me to be like the best Black woman I could be. And I'm just so pleased that, so many people get that now. And I think, and that's just, I mean, I'm a Black woman who doesn't have a disability or who isn't from the LGBTQ network. So like, yes, I'm Black and I'm a woman, but I also understand that there's so many cross sections of, I guess, like intersectionality and situations where, again, like that must be even trickier to, again, without playing top trumps, but that must be even trickier to have to balance and to manage. And it's just understanding, like, I guess, your privileges in the world and what else might be going on around you.
Yeah, I mean, the phrase you used a couple of times there is top trumps, which no,
everyone picks up on this.
Really? Okay.
I say it a lot.
But it's really interesting because like you see, I'm trying to think where to even start on this, because there was a conversation recently where people were talking about protected characteristics, and protected characteristics is a new phrase for me this year, which is suddenly coming up more and more.
Didn't you tweet like what they all are?
Yeah,
that was super helpful, by the way.
It's because every time someone mentions it, I have to Google it because I'm a white male, and with like, I would say no protected characteristics, but now I'm kind of looking at a couple of them and going, yeah, maybe you could say I have that. I think people are kind of clutching at straws to say they have protected characteristics sometimes because we want to be part of that club. But
that's an interesting observation. That's really interesting, actually, you say that.
But people, I mean, there is an idea now that it's like people with privilege and everyone else is in this kind of group, and some people see it as like, well, this is more important than the other. I'm Black, but this person has a disability, and sometimes I feel like the privileged people are making everyone else compete. Compete for what's more important. You see it with like government funding. That's like, well, what should we cut? Funding for disabilities or funding for older people?
Neither of them. No, totally. And I'm just trying to think. And I think recognizing that there are groups of people who have, it's a fact, there are groups of people who have more privilege than others, and typically that has tended to be kind of a white male, as you mentioned, with no protected characteristics, will have a certain amount of privilege that, of course, I as a Black female am not privy to. But me as a Black woman will also have, and I know I speak about this with my friends a lot, and we debate a hell of a lot, and they hate that I use this and that I think this way. But I think, I also have to recognize that I have a privilege. And the thing is that I've been reminded for so long, again, as a Black woman, that I don't have any privileges. But actually I do within my community. Like, I also have privileges. But again, it's not top trumps. It's all just about being aware of it. It's all just being aware of it. And I think that there are, like you said, we were talking about the patriarchy or whatever, but it's just acknowledging and accepting that you have them. It's not, no one starts to identify privileges for people to feel guilty. Like, it's not so you can sit there and go, woe is me, because that is just a symptom of your privilege if you're going to do that. It's actually to say, oh, I have these privileges, which means that I have access to X. So actually, it's kind of my responsibility then to ensure that these people have access to X. Or how can I help these people have access to X, or support or be an ally to, and etc. So yeah, I get sometimes, yeah, privilege is an interesting one because lots of people kind of have it in different ways. But it's nothing to cry about. It's just to accept and acknowledge and think about what your responsibility then is.
And I suppose the beauty is that we can care about more than one issue at one time. Like,
Totally.
we don't have to just pick one of these and deal with
it. Totally.
You shared a quote on Twitter, which I kind of want to ask you about, where you said there is a tendency to conflate issues of racial inequality with other issues such as gender and LGBTQ plus equality in order to avoid confronting it. Does that sound familiar? What can you explain that to me? Because I'm dumb. This is what I'm saying. Explain that to me like I'm stupid. And what I mean by that is I'm actually stupid.
No, of course. I think, and this is obviously, it's my opinion because I'm the only person talking, but I definitely think that there's something in the fact that this, like, the term diversity has, trying to put this in the right way. Yeah, what I mean by it is that diversity covers so many different aspects. And like you said, like, no one's asking anyone to choose which, like you said, protected characteristic, etc., should be placed as a priority or whatever that is, because I don't think that's that is right, let alone fair, but I certainly don't think that's right. But I do find, and maybe, and it might be kind of obvious actually as I'm saying it out loud, like I was going to say, I am a Black woman, so it's probably obvious that I'm going to find race being the one. Well, it could be, I could have found gender, I guess. But I often find race is the one that people shy away from the most. But I imagine if you spoke to somebody who was, LGBTQ plus, that they'd say actually it was those issues that people shy away from most. But again, I can only talk about my own experience. I personally feel that race is the one people shy away from most, and feel quite nervous in my experience about talking about. And I wonder if it's because it's often one that's been spoken about for such a long period of time, and because there have been laws set in place again for a fairly long period of time that are supposed to prohibit or stop certain things from happening, especially in regards to race, that I wonder if that then makes people kind of think, maybe it's not even being scared of talking about it, maybe it's just thinking that there is no need, I wonder, because actually on that you can name certain laws or whatever that means that, yeah, like, I'm not racist, or I can't be a racist if that's the case. And I just think there's a tendency for race sometimes to just not be the easiest one for people to talk about on the agenda, because it's also, I mean, and I know that there's definitely other protected characteristics that are incredibly visible. But obviously, again, it's very visible in the sense, I am either Black or I am not. And I yeah.
It feels, I think
that was a bit of a rant. Sorry, a bit of a rant.
No, it's because I think everyone's trying to find their way through this.
Yeah.
And it's I'm also conscious that the conversation is different when it's being recorded. Because there is that fear, and I have it so much, and you hear lots of people have it, that they're afraid to say one word wrong. Yeah, totally. And I think I think race, I think you're right that it does feel especially dangerous thing to talk about. And for me, it's like, would I talk about it if this was live as opposed to a recording? I would like to think I would, but there's that fear that you're going to say one thing out of place. And now we live in a world where suddenly it's online, suddenly it's shared, and forever you're known as the person who said this thing.
Totally. And sorry to jump in there, but totally. There is this, again, I'm quite new to Twitter, thanks to IWITOT. And there is this you see it, like as soon as something is said, it is written, it is in stone, it is fact. Essentially, it's definitely not, but it's perceived as fact. And I think that, like you said, makes people more scared about kind of talking about things like race. And actually, the fear shouldn't, even though I'm kind of being hypocritical here because I feel very scared also. So funny. Just within my own community, I know I have differing views, but you know, I don't think that fear should exist, because you shouldn't. We're all learning. Like everyone's learning constantly, and I think there is. It doesn't matter. It does matter actually, but let's not get hung up on the specific words that are being used. If somebody can, as long as that person who has used that word is happy to be corrected, is happy to stand corrected. That's it. That's exactly what I mean. It's not about whether or not you've used an incorrect word or the wrong phrase or whatever, as long as you are happy to then stand corrected and apologize if that's necessary. If that's necessary.
I think that's a really amazing point, like that it's like to be the ability to be corrected and to make mistakes.
Yeah.
And it's like, I almost feel like we should all be able to fuck up once, at least, and then it's pulled back and you have a chance to do it. You see people kind of being called upon to lose their jobs or to be kind of punished for that one mistake. But I mean, how else do you learn?
But then I guess I'm going to play devil's advocate a little bit here, because I totally agree, and that's basically just what I've said. But I guess on the other hand, there is the argument of, but lots of people, especially in the age that we live in now, social media, Twitter, etc., there are so many places you can go to learn. So there is a little bit of a part of me that also says, like, actually, is it okay? Like, do you get to make? There's some, like, it's like, again, there are top trumps in mistakes. It's like, what mistakes can you make and what ones can't you? You know, there's that. Actually, maybe there are some things you should just know. Yeah. There are some things I think you should just know. And I know that's not going to be a popular opinion, but I do think there's some things actually that you're not allowed to make a mistake on, because you should just know. But if you do make a mistake on that thing and someone does then say to you, you should make a mistake on this because you should just know, people should just be open to that.
I mean, there's some things when you get to 40, 50, 60 year old, you should just know. Like, it's been mentioned quite a lot.
That's the thing. And that's the thing, is because you've probably, actually, you should know by now, because you've been allowed to make that mistake for a long period of time. Or other people have been able to make that mistake, so you don't have to. So like, take that learning.
I think I find my solution is to ask questions rather than make statements. I think we live in a stage where people feel they have to have an opinion. And it's like, instead, sometimes you can just ask and just hear what experts like you think, as opposed to,
actually, not an expert.
As a white male, let me tell you, Camille, what it's like to be a black woman.
And that's the thing. Oh gosh, I'm so glad you picked up on that, because that's the other thing. It's like, then I am not the voice for all black women. And I think to people who are not black women, it's very easy to, or people who are not, who don't have a disability, for instance, it's so easy to go to the one disabled person you know who has a particular type of disability and like kind of expect everything from them. And sometimes, you know, I feel that, like you said, and I do take it as a compliment. It's nice that you'd like to think of me as an expert, but I definitely am not. I'm an expert in my own experience, and I'm totes up for talking about that, because just even amongst my friendship group, a lot of them who are black women, like, we disagree all the time. Like, there's a big debate I have with my friends about using the phrase BAME or person of color. And like, I've got some friends who preferred people of color. I prefer BAME. Like, it comes down to all these finicky things. But really what we're all saying is we just want to be respected. Don't care how you do that. Just respect me.
Like, people talk about it being like political correctness gone mad, which is a real like old racist person thing to say. But I think the risk of it is, it's like, the thing people are afraid of is the risk that everyone feels safe, everyone is like understanding of each other, and actually that's not too scary a risk, is it?
Totally. And then it goes back to that thing that we were saying again, you know, it's about that, like, there's so many of my friends, especially here at the Red Cross, actually, so many friendships I've made at, you know, that started off as colleagues and I would definitely say have become like real friends, where the relationship I'd like to think, well, actually, I know because they've come to me and they've said these exact words, like, you've created a safe space for me to be able to ask these questions, to find out more. And I'm thankful for that, and I'm grateful for that. And I think more of us need to do that for each other, but not at the risk of your own mental health, or at the risk of your own sanity, or, you know, kind of self-preservation. But if you're able and willing to, I really, really encourage people to create those safe spaces for people to ask those questions and to learn, and not be kind of kicked in the face if they get it wrong.
It seems
and
like
and again, I say get it wrong or get it right. Like, there isn't a right or wrong specific. In some cases there are. Sorry, I take that back. In some cases there are.
Well, it's always a lot more nuanced than we'd like it to be. It's not as black and white sometimes. Red Cross seems like a really kind of forward-thinking place, you know, beyond the work it does. But you have people like you, Ruby. Does everyone in Red Cross have like a double barrel name? Is it like
yeah, that's the thing.
Is that
you can't work here unless you've got a double barrel name. No, not really.
Do you find it's like difficult to balance all of this? You know, obviously you have your day job, you have like the stuff you have to be doing anyway, but then you're obviously doing like a lot of good work in terms of diversity network, in terms of, you know, speaking at I Wish I Thought of That, and helping other people in the sector. Is it tough to juggle it all? You talk about your mental health there. Is that something? Is that a challenge?
I think everyone struggles to balance stuff, whether it's just balancing your day job and you don't do any kind of extracurricular activities. But I have a great network of people around me. So yeah, when it does get tough, like Ruby, I can run and have a chat with her over a glass of wine or whatever. And I think that's the thing. It's so important. If you are balancing all of these things, and you know, you are trying to progress within your career, or trying to get, as you said, get out there, or whatever it might be, that it's so important that you have a network of strong, in my case, I have a network of really strong women who support me, and allies who support me in everything I think I do. And I'm really lucky and privileged in some cases to have that. So yeah, if it answers your question, I think, sometimes it is tricky to balance all of those things. But yeah, I've got great support networks. And again, with my day job, they're so supportive of me. Like, I'm at work today, and I've kind of changed some of my hours today to allow to have an hour to have a chat with you. So, you know, like, they're so supportive of me being a part of like the wider fundraising network, because it's in our best interest to do that. Like, why would we not want to be a part of it?
Like, it definitely is in our best interest, and everyone, you know, it feels like the voices are getting louder, you know, the almost the unheard voices are getting louder. Yes. Where is it going? Like, what is the future of this? Because there's a worry sometimes it might run out of steam. Obviously, there's been a discussion about race, like you said, for a long time, and sometimes it feels like it disappears a little, and then people like Trump bring it, and Brexit bring it back to the forefront.
Yeah.
But it's like, where are we going with this? What's the future of our sector?
The future of our sector.
That's a pretty big question.
Whoa, we were just talking about how much I have to carry on my shoulders there, Simon.
And to wrap up, Camille, what is the future of the sector?
What's the future of the sector? I'd much rather, and this is a weird one, but I prefer to use the phrase, although throughout this whole conversation I probably haven't even used it, but I prefer to use the phrase, it's an inclusive sector, because my understanding of inclusivity and diversity are that a diverse sector is one that looks diverse, like has different people with different protected characteristics, kind of from, you know, different identities, different race, etc. But I think that's important, and I don't think one can exist without the other. I definitely think that's important. But I think I'd like to believe that in the sector we're already making leaps and bounds that way. In some places, I know we've got a long way to go in others, but I genuinely believe, in terms of just through the law, actually, just through the law, like, you kind of are forced to make leaps and bounds in that way. Where I think the future really is, and the benefits really are, is actually creating an inclusive sector. And that's different for me, because to me, inclusivity is about how people feel. So yes, you can write a report that says we have increased our BAME representation, for instance, across the fundraising sector from 9% BAME to 15% BAME. And that's an achievement. Like, if they're the right people for the job, that's an achievement, right? Mm-hmm. However, what I'd love to hear about is like the people survey that you did, like those extra the extra people that you now have on board. How do they feel? Are they here, but yet don't feel comfortable to be themselves at work? Then to me, that's a bigger issue. There's no point getting the numbers if you haven't got the inclusivity behind it. So often I prefer to talk about inclusiveness, and I think that's the future of the sector, rather than just diversity.
It's really, really interesting. I haven't thought about it like that. It's the difference between that kind of tick the box exercise. It's the difference between someone telling you and showing you, and the feeling is there. I mean, yeah, it can look very diverse, but what good is that if people don't feel safe?
If people don't feel it?
Yeah.
And people underestimate things like people surveys and training and coaching. People really underestimate those kind of things. But as you know, they're so valuable, because numbers only tell you half the story. They don't tell you about feelings. And I've seen that, because as a Black woman, a lot of people, certainly within my community, would say, "Oh, but you're in spaces that like we're not. Like, what are you complaining about, Camille? Like, like you said, you're out there. People know you." Or say people, my 300 followers on Twitter, like, and again, amongst my friendship groups, both inside the sector and outside, like they're like, almost, what do you have to complain about, kind of thing. And it's like, well, A, I'm not complaining, but B, it's not about whether or not I'm present. It's actually about how I feel. Luckily, I do feel within my experience, mostly included in the experiences that I've had, and I get that I'm really privileged to be able to say that. But it's about how are people feeling?
Yeah, well, that's positive that you feel that as one person. Like as you say, you can only talk about your own experience, but feels positive.
But I'm also aware that my experience, unfortunately, isn't the majority experience of Black women. From my experience talking to other Black women in the sector, that doesn't seem to be everyone's journey.
Yeah.
But that's where the sector needs to be. And again, it's so easy. It's like with, I hate to say the B word, but with Brexit, people are such in their bubble, and I sometimes wonder, like, I always have to keep checking myself. I always have to check myself, because in my bubble, things seem like you said, like people are talking about it, change is happening.
Yeah.
Things seem lovely in my bubble. Yeah. But actually, I need to sometimes remind myself to keep taking myself outside of it, because I'm very lucky to have the bubble I have and the network around me and the support I have. But what does it look like outside? And that's why Twitter is such a great space for me, I think, to learn that.
Yeah, it is. I mean, there's also the risk with Twitter, though, that again, you're surrounded by people who reinforce your own opinion sometimes. Like, Twitter's kind of liberal. I mean, there's some Nazis on it and stuff, but it's for the majority, it's liberal. And you and I both work in quite liberal environments, but it's a much wider problem than that, isn't it? And that's a real challenge.
It's true. And that's the thing. It's what does it look like outside of that?
Yeah.
What does it look like outside of that? And then, which is why, again, it's just so important for people to talk about their own experiences when they're making statements, opinions, facts, whatever it might be. And again, my thing about caveating everything I say and I do with either top trumps, as we established, or this is my own personal experience.
Yeah.
Because I'm just so conscious that everyone's had a different journey. People surveys, they're great to find that out.
Well, I think you should be allowed to share your own experience, and there isn't going to be one right way. So I don't want anyone to I don't want people to have to check what they're saying too much.
True.
So I really appreciate you taking the time to be open and honest and allow me to put you on the spot with a few bigger questions.
Yeah.
Have you got any speaking gigs coming up? Anything we should be looking at that aren't your day job?
No, not at the minute.
No,
I'm hoping so. I know. Well, people tell me, contact me, get on Twitter, contact me on Twitter, and
because you're a great speaker. You're
a
really good speaker.
Oh, Mandy Johnson's added me to her great speaker list.
Oh yeah, okay.
Which is pretty cool. So, no, I'd encourage people to definitely get in touch with me, and so I can speak to them.
Good.
I'd love to.
And where can people find you if they want to hear more of your strong Black female opinions?
Mostly it's just retweets, but I hope those retweets come across as my opinions.
Yeah.
So they can find me at Camalamalams.
Camalamalams? How do we?
Camalamalams.
Oh
I
my
had
God.
to think about whether or not I wanted to change that to make it sound more professional, but I was like, nah.
I like
But
it.
you
I
could,
just struggle to spell it.
yeah, you could also just search Camille St-Omer Donaldson into Twitter, and it would also come up.
Are you
But
the only Camille St-Omer Donaldson?
I must be.
Yeah, surely the
I
best.
must,
Anyway.
surely.
Um,
But yeah, at Camalamalams, which is Camalamalams.
Wow, I'll put a link in the podcast description for people.
Cheers. Thanks,
Yeah,
Simon.
I'd love to see you tweeting more, and hopefully we'll get to see you speaking more and more and more.
Yeah. Oh, I'd love to. I really, really appreciate you asking me to come on the show.
Yeah, it's a show. You can call it a show.
Yeah, and just really grateful, and I'd love to hear people's thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure people will be very vocal with their opinions, as always.
Yeah.
But I'd love to have you come on and talk about stuff. I mean, I'm conscious. I remember I had a guest on before, Jonathan, and he made the point. In your example, in your case, there's the risk of you constantly getting boxed in to talk about diversity, and I apologize that because that's obviously the subject. But
Yeah.
I mean, you're obviously an expert and have
not an expert, just passionate, just passionate.
I mean, in your job, and so we haven't even touched on your job or anything like that. So I'd love to have you back on to talk about stuff beyond the obvious.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Just a quick one though on that, I guess, is that I enjoy talking about it. I'm super passionate about it, so I don't feel bad about talking about it or being asked to talk about it. But I totally get also where Jonathan's coming from in terms of it's not all I want to talk about, but I do like to talk about it a lot.
So I haven't boxed you in, so I'm okay. Good. Thank God. Okay,
Awesome.
well, listen, Camille St-Omer Donaldson.
Perfect.
Really, thank you. Thanks so much for being on here and talking to me. Really lovely to speak to you. Congratulations again on your I Wish I Thought of That win.
Thank you.
And for everything you're doing. Good on you. Great to see you.
Thanks very much, Simon. Cheers.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Simon Scriver's Amazingly Ultimate Fundraising Superstar podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and head over to changefundraising.com to learn more or get in touch with Simon. Or don't, whatever. You're big enough to make your own decisions.
Hello, this is Morgan Freeman. For discounts on Simon's best-selling online fundraising courses, go to www.changefundraising.com/training and use coupon code podcast. Complete them in your own time, wherever you want. Get busy living or get busy buying.